Hi, welcome back. This is my bedroom, you know that. Whew. Today's video is pretty much the whole reason that I started this series. This is the video idea that I wanted to do originally over a year ago. It's kind of a spicy one, so buckle in. As you can see from the title, today we are discussing the problems that I see with AA sponsorship. And boy, do I have a lot of opinions on this one. I'm almost not even sure where to start, so I guess we're just going to jump in right to the deep end. I'll start by making it clear that I never had an official sponsor, This is video 4. I'll start by making it clear that I never had an official sponsor for a number of reasons, not least of which because the whole idea kind of made me very uncomfortable. I had a temporary sponsor for about a month and a half before I left the program, and even that was not the best situation. So what are sponsors and what are they supposed to do? A sponsor is an AA group member who has a length of sobriety and who is willing to provide one-on-one support to new members through their early recovery. It's often recommended that your sponsor be the same gender as you and living the kind of sobriety life that you envision for yourself. Generally, your sponsor is the person that you work through the steps with, who is at the same home group as you and is the go-to person that you go to for support. You will often find sponsees develop really close friendships if they've been together for long periods of time. I can hear you asking, but Keisha, what's the problem with that? Last video, you talked all about connection. My biggest problem with sponsors is the only thing that qualifies you to be a sponsor for somebody is being a former addict. The only qualification that you need to sponsor somebody is a length of sobriety time and participation in the meetings, and to already have worked the steps on your own with a sponsor. The intent is for you to be there to support somebody through their journey, but there are a lot of red flags that come up when you start to understand the aspect and boundaries of the sponsor-sponsee relationship. While having that support is great, this person tends to take the role of a counselor or a therapist, and that can create a lot of problems when they have no formal education. Members of AA meetings often are not people who have mental health training, crisis training access, trauma response training, or counseling training, or anything of the sort. Unless this person has taken it upon themselves to become educated, which is incredibly rare, the only advice they can offer is from their own lived experience. Sponsors are often chosen at random or with little preparation by new members who are nervous, anxious, possibly a little frightened, and are encouraged to find a sponsor and to start working the steps as soon as they can. Finding a sponsor is another easy way to tie members to the program by creating a level of accountability and dependency, especially if this person experimenting with sobriety doesn't have support elsewhere. Sponsors hold an innate power balance over their sponsee by having time in the program and sober wisdom, which can make new sober members question their position of freedom within their own recovery. This power imbalance can often cross lines and abuse boundaries if your sponsor feels entitled to your recovery. And there's really limited resources if anything were to happen. Crossing boundaries can be as simple and innocent as repetitive texts and daily check-in calls, or it can translate into more dangerous situations that can be really hard for the sponsee to get themselves out of. I spoke to somebody who once told me that after a meeting, they were walking home with their sponsor in conversation, and without invitation, their sponsor walked into their apartment and started making coffee. And this person had no idea how to respectfully ask them to leave because they felt like they had an obligation to be kind. This person only had a few months of sobriety and didn't know how to confront their sponsor, who they viewed as a figure of authority. This sponsor had no power except for the title of sponsor and still felt entitled to enter her space uninvited. This can be really dangerous, and even if it doesn't sound dangerous, or if members will play this off as being there for somebody and wanting to offer support, for somebody who is new to the program and doesn't really know these people, they are all strangers. And it's really difficult to advocate and speak up for yourself if there's only two people in the room and one of them has a power balance. When situations like this occur, the structure of the AA system leaves no recourse for reporting or resolving the issue. There are no head offices or oversight committees, so if you find yourself in a situation with a dangerous sponsor, it's up to you to find a new meeting and hope you don't run into that person again. The main purpose of having a sponsor is to work the 12-step programs together, and this is where another big issue comes in for me. They have no obligation to confidentiality. AA is a non-profit, AA is a non-profit fellowship with no government oversight. There are no legal requirements or confidentiality agreements that you might find in a treatment center or hospital, and there is no policy to prevent gossip or crosstalk between members outside of the meetings or program. Most members will talk about an established level of trust between a sponsor and a sponsee, but without legal repercussions, human nature tends to take over and gossip will spread wildly between members, especially after or before meetings when people tend to mingle outside and chat. I can assure you that this will turn into a big problem for people once they start working the steps and getting to step 4 and step 5 with a sponsor that they don't know very well. Step 4 is meant to be this big unveiling of the ego and all of your fuck-ups and angers and resentments and things that are holding you back from recovering and spiritual awakening. And you're supposed to write this all down and then share them with your sponsor. Not only does this further the power divide and authority they have over you, because you're telling them your 4th step, but they're sure as hell not telling you their 4th step. So there is this understanding that they know all of this stuff about you, your story and your past, and flaws and insecurities, but you're not getting that same feedback from them. So there's a more drastic split in power, but it also provides them with gossip and judgment and possibly even blackmail. Even if your sponsor isn't sharing your story maliciously or isn't attaching your name to the story, but still sharing it out, it's still incredibly harmful and a fracture of trust. I can't tell you the amount of times that I heard about other people's struggles through their sponsor, and I was only in the program for a year. And what exactly is a sponsee supposed to do if they start to feel uncomfortable? There's nobody to report to. So I guess it's up to them to go meeting shopping again and to go find a new sponsor if they feel comfortable with that. AA communities tend not to be huge in cities that you're in. Membership worldwide is 2 million, so if you're in a small city, everyone knows everyone. So shopping around is not always a viable option. In my experience, AA sponsors are generally the first person to lay on the judgment after a relapse, and they can be very pushy and judgmental about meeting participation and involvement and how often you're going to meetings. This is kind of played off and argued that they're being supportive and that they're encouraging you in your recovery, but it can be really overwhelming and a lot to handle to have this stranger basically telling you how to live your life in early recovery. They really focus on breaking down your ego and breaking down the beliefs you might have about being able to handle your recovery on your own, or what I consider individuality. They really want to force that out and make you believe that you can only recover with the program. Sponsors are often the ones that push 90 meetings in 90 days and constant communication. My temporary sponsor wanted me to talk to her twice a day, and I was not going to do that. Well, this kind of support and pressure might be what some people need in early sobriety. For me, it really, really turned me off, and I just saw red flags everywhere involved with this dynamic. In this randomly chosen stranger who is not confined to having someone who is newly sober place all of their trust into someone that was chosen randomly and was a former addict and is not formally educated in addiction or mental health and is not required to keep their stories private or confidential seems like an incredibly dangerous situation to me. Having no policies or procedures in place for reporting inappropriate behavior or dealing with uncomfortable or dangerous situations is also incredibly reckless. And it's the easiest way for issues to go unaddressed and ignored and brushed under the rug. Most people in the program have good relationships with their sponsors, and that's why they stay in the program. And I'm not saying that that isn't beneficial. Having that one-on-one support is really important in recovery. But the way that they go about it and the approach to anyone being able to sponsor is not appropriate, in my opinion. When I see a 24-year-old who has 2 years sober try to sponsor a 30-year-old through their active addiction, it makes no sense to me, especially with no formal education or understanding of this 30-year-old's life experience. There are a lot of other things that come along with being a sponsor that I think are problematic, but aren't talked about because sponsors have this air of being that support system. I think in general in society, we've kind of lost the idea of just being there for somebody and creating these deep connected relationships that sponsors could be doing, but instead they're trying to take the place of a counselor, and that can be incredibly dangerous. Whew, like I said, guys, this one is heavy in opinion and not everybody is going to agree with me, but I personally think that part of the AA program, separate from the 12 steps and separate from the meetings, that is harmful for recovery is the addition of sponsors. Shorter video this week, but that is that. I got a little heated, so I'm going to go take a break and chill out a little bit. I will see you next Wednesday. Bye. Ugh.